in your next life, Ward, or else
Next
just
life,
move,
yeah.
move to Tibet. Okay, so getting started a little late here, sorry, everyone. So welcome, everyone, to the April 7th workshop and regular meeting of the Town Board. Please join me while we pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'm going to need a motion to add a couple of things to our agenda. The first is to add a brief discussion to our workshop about the Guinea project in Hyde Park. So can I have a motion to go ahead? And then a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And then I'll need a motion to add resolution number 13, local law 1, regarding subdivision regulations to the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. So the first item on our agenda is a workshop on the rental registry. If people recall, about a month ago or so, we had some residents who came in to speak with us regarding concerns that they had in their neighborhood about a home that had been turned into essentially a rooming house. And so they expressed, their concerns regarding noise, traffic, impact on their well, impact on their septic. So, kind of triggered our research. The attorney to the town has done quite an extensive research project, and we're looking at various options. They, all have advantages and disadvantages, and so we're pursuing it, and he's just going to go ahead and give us an update, Warren, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, this is not an easy problem to deal with. It all stems from what the definition is of a single-family residence and what the definition is of a family. And the problem is in residential districts that are single-family or two-family dwellings, there are oftentimes an overcrowding or a pushing to the maximum the occupancy of a single-family residence. And it stems a lot from in college towns, college communities, where people take single-family residences and then adapt those so that 7, 8, or 9 college students can occupy a building as a single-family residence. And it's been a problem for a lot of municipalities. And the difficulty is in trying to regulate that and really get at the problem of overcrowding and overuse and the negative impacts that such facilities have on neighboring properties and single-family residences versus protecting the sanctity and the privacy of people being able to live in non-traditional ways, because not everybody lives who lives together as a family is married, and you have situations where people have foster children, and communities have grappled with trying to pass legislation which enables them to protect the residential character of communities, but at the same time not overstepping their bounds and passing laws which can be declared unconstitutional. And there has been a lot of litigation over this. So in our situation in the town, and most municipalities deal with this in their definition of a family. And most municipalities have grappled with how to define a family in a way that provides the protection but doesn't run afoul of constitutional limitations. And our definition of family is actually very simple. It's one or more persons residing in a dwelling unit as a household constituting a single housekeeping unit. So it doesn't, it's not restricted to a family or a traditional family per se. It defines family as the relationship between the people who live in the house in terms of whether they constitute a single housekeeping unit. Lots of municipalities have restrictions on the numbers, so they will restrict it to four people who are unrelated. And if you exceed that threshold, then the burden is cast on the property owner to prove that you are actually living as a traditional household unit. The difficulty is to try to find something that that's going to work for the town, provide the protection, but we don't want to get involved, one, with unnecessary litigation, and two, we don't want to interfere with the legitimate rights of landlords and owners of property to maximize the use of the property. So there's been, I provided you with a summary of all of the case law that to date that's been printed by the Department of State to give you some guidance as to how other municipalities have dealt with this and how in some cases they've been struck down, in some cases they've been upheld. In Poughkeepsie, for example, there's a very famous case which is described in here, in which they provided that, I'll just read that. Poughkeepsie's definition of a family withstood a challenge that it violated the due process clause, and the court held that it was valid to use a rebuttable presumption to establish which groups of unrelated individuals should be considered a family. So in Poughkeepsie's case, they provided in their definition of family that there is a rebuttable presumption that four or more unrelated persons living in a single dwelling do not constitute the functional equivalent of a traditional family, and violates the prohibition against doing something other than a single family in a residential neighborhood. And in that case, the burden then shifted to the property owner to come before the town and prove that they did meet the functional equivalent. And some of the factors in Poughkeepsie, which were considered by the zoning administrator in trying to decide whether this passed muster, was whether they shared the entire house, whether they live and cook together as a single housekeeping unit, whether they share expenses for food, rent, utilities, and other household expenses, and whether it's permanent and stable. The problem with the Poughkeepsie provision, even though the court upheld it, is that it casts a burden, an intrusive burden, potentially, on property owners to come in and have to justify the living arrangement. So that might not be palatable to the full board based upon input that I've been getting from you. The other technique that's been used is to limit the number of occupants per building based upon the size of the structure on square footage. And if you do that, it apparently does not violate the provisions of the Fair Housing Act. But how you come up with a formula is very difficult, and that would create a lot of work. I haven't seen any prototypes for that, and I'm sure we could find them. But you're going to have to develop something that's going to be quite sophisticated and may be hard to enforce and may cast an unreasonable burden upon our building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. But that's another possibility. Basically, what the recommendations and the guidelines that Department of State gives for drafting an ordinance that's based upon a definition of family, these are the standards that they would suggest that you look at. One, that you have to have as a motive the preservation of the character of single-family areas, and that's a legitimate objective of zoning. And you cannot exclude a group which in every but a biological sense is a single family. So you can have lots of groups that people that live together, but they're not biologically related as a traditional family. You can't violate that because you have to honor non-traditional family relationships. The courts have indicated that the factual and functional equivalent of a traditional family of unrelated persons may be evidenced by the following: whether there's a single housekeeping unit, whether there is a more or less permanent living arrangement as opposed to a transient, and whether there's stable rather than transient living arrangements, except where handicap are concerned. And the courts have paid special deference to group homes where handicapped people are living together as the functional equivalent of a family, and those are clearly protected under the law. So changing our law is not going to be that easy. One, to satisfy all of your concerns of the board, because you may not all have the same opinion as to what type of intrusion we may have on people's right to rent out and utilize their property. And two, you have to draft something that's going to pass constitutional muster in the event that it's passed. And you also want to be sensitive to the fact that you do live in a somewhat of a college community, and there is a need for housing for students. So there are ways of doing it, and if you want to go that route, you know, I'm sure I could draft something or several provisions that you could consider that would place some limitations on the number of people that live together, and require that it in fact be a traditional family type of relationship, even though the residents are not related. But before we go there, there may be another solution, and thanks to Emily, she picked something up today, and I've looked into it. And there is a provision in the Dutchess County Sanitary Code which may cover this. And it basically provides that if you read this section correctly, the rental home with 4 students might currently be in violation of the sanitary code since more than 3 unrelated adults requires a permit for a rooming house. Now, I can't guarantee you, bless you, that the definition in the sanitary code meets constitutional muster, but we didn't create this. This is something that Dutchess County has created, bless you, and enforced, and I empathize. I went through 3 weeks of that. And it may be that this provision can be utilized by the town, or we can refer to Dutchess County to look into this, to see whether what's being proposed in some of these homes is consistent with the sanitary code. And that would kind of leave us out of the business of trying to regulate these things unnecessarily if we don't have to. So what I did today was I contacted Dutchess County Department of Health, and the person I spoke to is referring it to somebody with more experience in these provisions, understands what our problems are, and is going to get back to me to see whether this provision, in fact, may prohibit some of these activities without us having to get into the business of regulating it. So I can report back to you on that, and that might be good news that we don't have to worry about. Or it could be that our building inspector, in deciding whether to issue a building permit or a certificate of occupancy, can rely on the sanitary code and refuse to issue a permit unless they comply with that. But it gets back to whether, under the county's definition of the living arrangement, is in fact a rooming house. And if it is, our zoning law does not permit rooming houses. There's no provision in our zoning law in any of the zoning districts where you can have a rooming or boarding house. So it could be, if it's a violation of the sanitary code, it would violate it would in fact need a license from the county for a rooming house, and if that's the case, then it couldn't be allowed in our town because we don't allow it. So there's a lot more information I have to gather. I provided you with some samples I gave of laws. In Wappingers, they passed a law in reaction to, I think, some deaths that occurred as a result of a fire. But that had to do more with registry of rental units. And I gave you another example of a town in Long Island which has a very comprehensive definition of family, which I didn't think was that bad, actually, but it could be worked with. Some of you may disagree. But it also has a rental registry provision. The problem with rental registry is that we're just not equipped at this present time to undertake that. I mean, that would be a fairly rigorous, formidable requirement where all people who rent out their homes would have to register, they'd have to be inspected, permits would have to be issued, and I'm not sure that we have the resources to do something like that. So, but it's something that could be considered. I'm not sure, though, that just rental registry without
Solve the problem.
will solve the problem, because if you can rent, you can register and you can inspect, but if it's still something that's permitted where you can have 9 students, living in a home, in a residential neighborhood, the rental registry is not going to solve the issue. So it's not an easy situation to address, but if you have any questions,
Well,
I'm not sure I can answer them, but.
Thank you, Warren, for the extensive research, and as you say, it is a complex problem, and I mean, basically, our job is to make sure that we do the work to benefit the public, and we can't really just focus in on one person or one issue. That's the work of the government. So it has to be explored thoroughly, and, my initial reaction is just like, how would we administer this program of registry? Because we're stretched really to the maximum right now. We're trying to live within the 2% budget. It's would entail certainly probably another full-time employee, and we have limited space in town hall. So, it's difficult to even get from A to B if we were all of like mind that that's what we wanted to do. I mean, certainly the argument that was put forth in the Pojo article about what happened in Wappingers was pretty persuasive, that, you do need to take actions to protect the health and welfare of your residents, and really that's kind of what was the intent of that law. But again, we have to strike this balance between having laws on our books that we don't enforce, or spending a lot to make sure that we can. So that's a big decision, because it involves the complexities of how we live within the budget and all those things. So, the other thing is I don't like to add laws that we can't enforce. Like, that's just doesn't feel good. But at the same time, these residents came to us, they asked for our help, and they have a real concern and a real issue, and if we can help them, I'd like to. So I'm thankful to Councilwoman Svensson for doing the research, and hey, if the county has this law in their books, why do we have to make a new one? We can really, that's what they're there for, to help us, and I'm all for that. I think that it was great that you contacted them already, and let's kind of see what happens with that. But
I'm just curious, after the last time we talked about this, I think we had asked residents if they had concerns in their neighborhoods to contact us, and I'm just wondering if anyone's heard about any other neighborhoods where there's
I've had a
housing.
couple people that have contacted me, yeah, and just kind of expressed concerns about it, for sure.
About the same property and neighborhood?
No, just other rental homes, yeah. In Hyde Park, but not that particular property.
With student rentals or
Just various, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know, Hannah, does anyone have any?
I have a few questions. There was an issue raised regarding half-high walls at this property, and I was wondering if 2113, Section 2113 would prevent that type of division within the property.
I don't know, but I heard about that.
Okay.
Where instead of, one thing I heard is that in this particular property, they may have 5 students living in one room. And they may have,
Erected privacy.
what do they call,
The
privacy walls, which,
Feet tall, which is almost the full height of the
right.
I think that that's something that, you might want to just, talk that over with the building inspector. I think he'll know more when
Yeah, this is in the county sanitary
Yeah,
code.
I'm going to review
that.
that with them.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm going to, I'm not just limited to the issue of whether it's a rooming house.
Okay.
There seem to be a
That's what
lot
I
of
was wondering.
provisions in there that regulate the way these
Yeah.
places must be constructed. And I want to see if there's a way that we can run past, or applications past them, so that they can review or inspect the property to see whether these violate the sanitary code. You certainly would like to do it before building permits are issued and before
Yeah.
it starts rather than coming in and trying to close it down. So it would be much better if we could get some consultation from the county, and they can perhaps review the plans that have been filed to see whether this particular mode of, I wouldn't say evading the law, but providing for this housing meets their
Well,
requirements.
I did speak with one of the residents in the neighborhood, and one of their concerns really is the capacity of the septic. You know, it's right across from their home, it's all wells and septic, and so that's kind of the thought process, is that why the Department of Health would be involved is because there's a maximum capacity of a septic based on the number of people who will be living there. So that is, I think, one of the things that if we were to proceed in some sort of adoption of a law, that we might have that as a component, because that's part of the issue, is that they should, have to have it approved by the Department of Health for that number of occupants.
But would 7 people who are related have to have it approved?
It
Living
goes
in
by
that
number
house?
of bedrooms.
It goes by bedrooms.
Yeah. Not
So
number
you
of
could
people.
have,
And the number
yeah.
of people is what affects the septic, not the number of bedrooms.
but
Well,
it-
it's like a multiplier of bedrooms times bathrooms. It's a
Mhm.
formula, but yeah.
I mean, that's
I agree with
currently in place right now, though, isn't it, when things
For
go,
new
for new
construction.
construction? Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's complicated,
Mhm.
and then when you get into the issue of, creating privacy walls, I mean, it does seem that that's something that has to be looked into to make sure that they're not violating, if not,
Fire
if
code.
not the intent, certainly the spirit of what this law is,
For the registry conversation, I saw the Village of Wappingers and many cities have done this, but has this been done on a town-wide scale? I couldn't find an example.
Of the registry for at
Being
the town.
implemented
One
for
for
a
a town.
town.
Yeah, I think I gave you, one of the examples I gave was a town.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, I saw the Village of Wappingers.
The Village of Wappinger, the other one is the
Town of
Town of
Riverhead.
Riverhead.
Town of
Town of
Riverhead.
Yeah.
Riverhead,
Yeah.
okay.
They have quite an extensive
Yeah.
registry provision.
Okay.
And they also have a comprehensive definition of
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
And if you read it, when you first read it, it kind of takes you back a little bit. It's just an intrusion, but then it kind of makes sense when you get into it. So, and I don't know how well it's worked in the town of Riverhead, but this was upheld by the courts.
Okay.
this particular-
I mean, the goal is the safety of the residents and the safety of the students in the homes. I mean, we know close to Marison Town of Poughkeepsie, there was that major fire, and a lot of lives were lost there. And I would hate to be the one sitting on this board if we didn't act, and God forbid something happened, and then everybody would be pointing the fingers, how come the town didn't do something? So we need to make sure that, I think we need to go through the process, and I appreciate you doing that, and we really need to come up with a good solution that helps the residents, helps the students, and the homeowner or the owner of that residence.
It protects the right. It's a balancing act.
It is a balancing
definitely.
act.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just put it out there. I mean, I would definitely like to, make sure people's neighborhoods are kept in a way that makes all the neighbors comfortable and preserves the value of their properties. I'm concerned about defining a family and putting the burden on residents to come and prove that they're a family. It doesn't feel like I've had other people bring that up to me also, that they don't feel good about that, that it just doesn't it seems like it's intruding on people's privacy to say that if you're a family, you have to prove it if your neighbor says you aren't, and so if there's another way to solve the problem, that's why I'm trying to look for other.
Well, I'm hoping there might be another way that we can rely on the county and their regulations. I should know within the next couple of days, I think, and then by the next meeting, I'll have an update for you, and we can go over it, and I'll have some more suggestions based upon what the county tells me, and see if we can come up with something that, there's always exceptions that you can provide, that it doesn't apply to certain relationships, and that you could do a registry that only applies in cases of a certain amount of number of people, depending on the bedroom of the house, so you don't have every single rental unit that
Does
has
the
to-
institutions like Mayor's College or the Culinary, could they be helpful at all with some some guidance on what they would want to see their students that don't live on campus. I'm not even sure what they'd be looking for, but, you know, if there was a registry of an approved rentals because they meet a certain criteria, because I'm sure they're concerned about the safety and welfare of their students living off campus as well. Maybe that's another avenue that we could maybe explore as well.
Sure, and Bard College too, because I think Bard, there's been, from what I understand, there's been a fair amount of conflict with the village of Tivoli, I believe somewhat with the town of Red Hook, and with this issue, and I can contact the attorney for the,
Yeah, that'd be
for
great.
the town, and maybe there's somebody at housing, student housing at Bard we can speak to see how they've kind of resolved, because I know they rely a lot on having, you know,
Correct.
off-campus housing for students. And-
Right.
And, you know,
I mean, if there's
my
a
children
safe-
lived
if
in
there's a safe
off-campus
way to
housing
do
too, and they
it
went to
that doesn't
college.
burden communities and the students are safe, because we do live in a college community,
Yeah.
and they're part of the community, and hopefully, a lot of the students that go to school here, they graduate here, and we would like them to stay here, and we want them to feel
Exactly.
welcome. So there's a balancing act for the students, too. I also want to advocate for them. So,
We need young people to come here and stay here, and that's why I'm concerned about us using the idea of keeping the character of a community by keeping out college students. That doesn't sit well with me.
And it's hard to define what you mean by character of a community.
correct.
Yes.
You know, if I
hard to
had
regulate
9
that.
students living across from me right now, I wouldn't be real happy. But when I did live in the town of Poughkeepsie, I had 2 homes next to me where they rented out to the culinary, and they were wonderful,
problem.
and I never had any issues.
I
so-
don't think it's the quality of the person, I mean, or if that's what, I don't think it's the nature of who they are. I think it's the volume.
That's what I.
That's what we're.
And that's where I'm
that's
saying, it
what-
needs to be in a safe environment. There was not
You
9
know.
people living in
Right,
those homes.
that's- it's the
There
volume
was 4, and it was
of
perfect,
people.
you know, because it was like a normal residence living there. Having 9 living in a small home in the development that they're in there.
You know, I mean,
that's-
because
that's
none of the laws
Right.
proposed limit it to less than 5.
Right.
Yeah, I think.
And it's hard, because
and,
you
yeah,
have 9 people, where all the cars go, and, you know, I mean, there are all these
there's a
collateral
lot of,
issues.
and
I-
the septic, the.
7 is the number that's been quoted, not 9. The
there's
email
an-
that you sent out today said
Yeah,
7.
I got something
At,
today that,
at this point, but that's all, you know, we're not talking about a specific case. We're talking
Well,
about
so
a
far-
general, but we're talking about something more generally. It's not, it shouldn't just be for a specific case.
I agree, but
Yeah.
so far I have not heard of another instance of college students living in a property like this.
We heard it here at the meeting, the public, when the public came. a
In the
woman-
one neighborhood.
And
but
then one
Yeah.
neighborhood.
I think the question
My
is whether
question
it's a
is it-
widespread
yeah.
issue that we
Is
need
this a
to.
It was
systemic
Well,
problem?
if it's not a widespread spread issue, then it won't really be relevant.
Right.
So we're passing laws.
one of the criteria for passing these laws
Right.
is that you have to be responding to a real problem.
Right.
It can't be just one
Right,
specific.
and that's
And it's
it,
not good to
absolutely.
legislate just
Something
based
for
upon
one.
one situation.
Absolutely.
So I'd be very wary about that. So we really need to know, and maybe our building inspector and zoning enforcement officer, our fire inspector can let us know whether they've encountered similar problems. Maybe they have. I don't know if that's the case, but certainly if the public knows of situations, it would be nice to
It'd be
hear
nice
about
to-
them.
Yeah, to hear it, and that's what we said the last time. We definitely want to hear from the public on this issue. It's an important issue, and, you know, just trying to do the right thing, but, you know, and I agree with all your sentiments about trying to welcome young people, but I also feel strongly that people who have invested in their neighborhoods really deserve some protections.
I agree.
I think they deserve some, you know, some protections and exploration for ways to achieve the goal without trampling on people's property rights.
Well,
So,
that's what we're looking for.
yeah,
Right.
so,
Yeah,
okay, so, okay, yeah, Dave, you've been quiet.
Yeah, I don't like passing laws to begin with, you know, they take somebody's rights away when you pass a law, I think, you know, somebody's freedom. And, but I can see residents have a concern. Where I live, it's a single-family neighborhood, and I wouldn't want 9 next to me. Safety, number 1, you know, and I know what fire's like. I lost a niece in a fire right up here, and it's a terrible thing. And they had a lot of kids, but they're all related. and a big house, but when you start jamming students in, I went to college and I rented off campus, you know, and we partied. And I know what can happen, it can deteriorate. And I've seen towns where the neighborhood has deteriorated because the owner sold to somebody else and it goes downhill. We have to be on guard for that. I'm not against renting to students, you know, like one student would be nice probably for a little extra income, but a boarding house you mentioned is the county is looking at as a boarding house.
Rooming house.
A rooming house, which we don't allow. So I think maybe then we, you know, found that we could look at the Duchess to give some guidance on that and not step on anybody's toes anyplace. And, you know, but like Aileen said, it's for the greater, better of Hyde Parkers, you know. But they have to speak up too. If there's a problem, we have to know about it. And
Right.
it can't be just one isolated place.
I think we all agree it's a sensitive issue, it's a
Yes.
juggling act, and it's a fine line on what we can do, and so I think more research
Well, I
needs to be
just,
done. And
you know, I felt the people that came, they were impassioned.
Oh, I agree.
And, you know, we haven't had a lot of that. I mean, honestly, you know, don't have people who come out every day and feel, especially in a group. And I think that I want to respond to that in a responsible way.
What they came with also listed a number of different concerns. Each person that got up had different concerns, and then they had about 5 different recommendations. So it's not like there's just one simple thing. that
Right.
needs-
There might
so
be
There's a lot of
things-
different angles to look at how to address, you know, the problems that are
So
potentially there.
that's what we're working on, and I don't think we're any closer to making a decision
an
at this
update by
point.
next meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, this is a situation where walk and not run, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think it's good to rush into something.
No, absolutely.
so, but-
So
live issue.
we'll move on then and keep talking about this as time goes on.
Warren, I appreciate all the work and all of the cases. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
That's,
I think
Very
you guys might be bored.
Well, you were busy this weekend. You were. So then the second item, I just want to give a brief update on the Hyde Park Guinea project. And if there are any, Warren, you can, I know, you can chime in too. I'm sure, is everyone familiar with this archaeological dig that,
Perhaps we should give a background
Yeah, a little back.
for the.
yeah, I'm just going to have to recall it off the top of my head, but I think possibly 15 years ago or so, there was some remains at Hackett Hill that were discovered, and an archaeological dig was pursued, and it was a project of the Dutchess County Historical Society, and they retained the services of a professor from Bard, Dr. Linder, is that his name? And they've progressed in this project. It's taken them a lot longer. They had some monies from I think the McCann Foundation, and essentially, they did not receive the returnables that they were supposed to from this project, and so they have entered into a disagreement. Can you enter into a disagreement with the professor, and have now written a letter demanding the return of these artifacts. The interesting, and severing their relationship, and they're looking to retain the services of another archaeologist. And the way Hyde Park plays into this is that there are artifacts. We own them, and no one disputes that. But right now, they're in the possession of the professor at Bard, and the Historical Society would like them to be returned. And they would need our cooperation in that, and we would send a letter to the professor asking that he does return these artifacts.
Do you know
to-
what he has? Or what they
Yeah,
found?
yeah, I just wanted to make it clear that we don't have any, we're not involved in the dispute.
Right.
And we're not passing judgment on who's right or wrong in this. This is something between the Historical Society and the archaeologists who perform the work. We're not saying anything was done improper, or we're keeping out of that portion of the battle. What we are, the dog we have in this fight is that when these artifacts are recovered, and I think they are, and I think they're being stored someplace, then they become the town's artifacts. And the question is, and we don't know whether there are 100 of them, or boxes, or cases. I think we need to find out exactly what it is, how much space they take up, And if it is recovered and given to the town, do we want to store it, or do we want to have Dutchess County Historical Society store it, or is there some other way that we can preserve it and make sure that?
Well, I did speak with a representative from the Historical Society, and they said that they do have the ability to store them. So basically, we would ask for the return of those and to be stored with the Dutchess County Historical Society. So that's where we are. They asked if we would write that letter, so I'm putting that out there too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't.
What would the letter be?
The letter would be a
Return our
request
stuff.
to give us back the artifacts. And part of the project, I believe, was to catalog these and to create a narrative and some other things that haven't really, they're disputing whether they've been done. So that's, as Warren said, that's between them. The only part we play is the ownership of these artifacts. And
I do think it'd be a nice tourist draw to have as a display case of these here in town somewhere, either at somewhere on recreation property, maybe Hackett.
Anybody know
the
what they
Hackett
are?
House.
Any idea
Well, we
what
don't even know what they
hands or
are.
bones or what?
I don't know.
I don't know. That's what we were there's supposed to be an inventory.
Right.
Once we get our hands on the inventory, then we can know whether this is something we may want to create a small exhibit and then have the rest.
And I
stored.
apologize, when was the dig?
it was quite a number of years ago. It was many years ago.
Well, I'm
10,
glad you found a place where they
that they could
could
they
go.
could go.
So that we know we
And it
have an
wouldn't be
option.
that we would permanently give them to them.
Yeah.
It would be, there would be some sort of length of time and, probably a clause that we could work in there is
Oh, yeah, no,
that we
it'd
could.
be our property.
They'd be our property. And so that's kind of where we are. And I don't know how everyone feels about writing that letter. Is that okay with you? And
I mean, it's town
Okay.
property.
It's interesting history, that's for sure.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yes,
ours,
yeah, yeah,
Especially since we have a new town historian, it'd be nice to have
it would.
Gotcha.
some projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. So,
Sorry,
moving,
can we just go back there for 1 second? Now, you said they wanted to hire somebody else. They want to do more digging, or they just want to hire?
there is that in the
That
future.
potential.
Yep, they're looking to do that. Yeah,
It would still be ours.
yeah, they're looking to continue the project.
Gotcha.
So, any other questions on that? Okay. So moving on, we would go on to the public comment on the resolutions only. I know that we had a gentleman in the audience who just left, and I have the feeling,
Does that-
I had the feeling he wanted to give us a public comment, but I guess we could do that
Yeah.
at the end, so, because he's
Okay.
actually not here. So let's move on to the resolutions.
Anyone else comment?
Al, do you want?
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to comment on the resolutions? Okay.
All right, Resolution 471 of 2014, resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute an agreement with the County of Dutchess to provide police patrols in connection with driving while intoxicated laws.
Second,
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
resolution 47-2, 2014. Oh,
Yeah, you can, I'm not talking.
wow, I'm being stereo. Okay. Resolution authorized, resolution 7-2 of 2014. Resolution authorizing return of the balance of escrow funds for zoning board of appeals.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye. Resolution 47-3 of 2014, resolution authorizing return of the balance of escrow funds for planning board.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 47-4 of 2014, resolution authorizing radio maintenance agreement between A1 Communications Incorporated and the town of Hyde Park.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 475 of 2014, resolution approving budget revisions to the town of Hyde Park for the period of March 2014, budget revisions number 2014-03.
Second,
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just wanted to mention, I love that TC had to move $4 under the one category. He's really keeping
He
it
is, yeah.
accounted to the penny.
Absolutely.
okay, resolution 47-6 of 2014, Resolution proclaiming the month of April 2014 as Parkinson's Awareness Month.
And do we have a second?
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution 47-7 of 2014, resolution authorizing Joanne Lawn, Senior Account Clerk, to attend the 14th Annual Town Finance School Conference given by the Association of Towns and the New York State Office of the State Comptroller.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 47-8 of 2014, resolution approving a memorandum of agreement in connection with collective bargaining negotiations with the Town of Hyde Park Police Benevolent Association.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution 4710 of 2014, resolution authorizing the Justice Court Clerk, Tessa Stokes, to carry over accrued vacation time.
We
what-
skipped
no.
9.
Yeah.
Did I? I
no.
thought 10
I
was
thought you
my
missed
number.
one, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Nine.
So you can do nothing then.
Resolution 479 of 2014, resolution authorizing the town clerk to solicit bids for the Hackett House repainting project.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So is that going to be happening this season?
Yeah, well, we're working on it. So
The
Pete is
RFPs, yeah.
preparing the RFPs, and we're breaking it into 2 RFPs, one for the carpentry and one for the painting, and let's hope it comes in under the
He
29.5.
feels it should.
That's
He says
good.
it's going to be pretty close.
That's awesome.
Good, yeah.
So are we doing 10?
You're on 10.
Okay. Resolution 47-10 of 2014, resolution authorizing Justice Court Clerk Tessa Stokes to carry over accrued vacation time.
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution 47-11 of 2014, order calling public hearing on the establishment of the Woodland Grange Estates Drainage District.
Yeah, let's have a little explanation on that.
I mean, basically, this is a subdivision that had been approved a while back and didn't go anyplace because of problems with the developer. And now it looks like they are willing to work with the town to try to jumpstart this development, which would be great for the town. So we're encouraging that, and one of the things we are doing to encourage that is to agree to the establishment of a drainage district. There'll be a road that will be created and will be deeded to the town when it's brought up to specs. And as part of that road system, there's a drainage system. And they've asked, the developer and their attorney have asked that we create a drainage district so that when that's fully developed, the cost of maintaining the drainage facilities would be borne by the residents of that subdivision. And even though it's a little bit more administration for us, we think it's a good idea. And if it will facilitate moving forward with the development, then that's okay with us. It does require a fair amount of administrative work. There's a map plan and report that was prepared by Pete and was filed with the town. And the next thing we have to do is hold a public hearing on this. I don't think it'll be controversial because the developer owns all of the lots. But we need to hold a public hearing on April 28th at 7 o'clock PM, if that's okay. And that's what this resolution
Yeah.
does.
Okay, so that sets the public hearing for
Yep.
April 28th?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on that?
No?
No?
I think it's a good approach.
I do too.
Yeah.
and- Good.
Do we have any other drainage?
This will
This
be
is-
the first one.
This will be the first one, right?
Yeah.
We
But they
spoke
do
about it.
them in
This
other
is-
towns.
Right, this is the first
Yeah.
time that
Yeah.
we're.
Yeah.
like-
It's
And-
becoming more popular because
Instead of the whole
communities
town
have
being
the
responsible.
responsibilities for maintaining these stormwater systems. And
Right.
so this allows you to make sure that the people in that neighborhood are
Are
paying.
paying.
Yeah.
Makes
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay, do we have a second then?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye. Me?
I think so.
Resolution 47-12 of 2014, resolution authorizing the town attorney to execute a consent judgment settling Violet Avenue LLC versus Town of Hyde Park tax certiorari proceeding.
And this is a tax certiorari proceeding for this property located at 600 Violet Avenue. There was a requested reduction from $575,800 to $455,700. With the assistance of our assessor, we worked out a settlement of the case, which reduces it to $480,000 with a waiver of refund of the town's portion of the taxes. So I think it's good settlement for the
I
town.
think so. Okay, thank you, Warren.
Warren, I meant to ask you this before the meeting, but is it worded right, a reduction in the amount of 480,000? It sounds like you're reducing it by 480,000.
Reduction, town services.
Yeah,
But
it does.
reduction of the assessment in the amount of, well, the reduction is, okay.
It's two.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't we change
I'm
it? It is a
sorry,
little.
it doesn't matter, but.
No, no, no,
no,
it's,
let's get
that's,
the-
no, that's important.
It's not, I mean, I'm
Two
going to
and
sign
up
it.
can mean a very, yeah, two, yes.
Question Warren.
So
So
shall we
say-
do it as
Why don't we
amended?
just say
Say
reduction in
tax
assessment
roll
to
to the
400,
amount.
to 400?
Okay, so we, as amended then?
Yes.
So do we vote on that again? Yeah, do,
I had a question,
and,
Yeah.
just because I'm learning. The waiver of the refund, what is it?
Well, if you reduce an assessment and the taxes have been paid on that assessment, then there's a refund of town taxes and a refund of school taxes, usually with interest. And I've been trying to make it a practice when I settle these to waive the town tax. So they've agreed to that. So not positive I can do it in every case, but it's
So we don't have to refund.
so we don't have to, it doesn't cost us any money.
well, what happens is that they often initiate the lawsuit and then they aren't acted on, or, you know, they don't mature or get to the court for a number of years. So once they initiate the lawsuit, that's when you'd have to go back to pay. That's
Yeah.
right. So the fact that they've sit out there, and there were a number when we took office that have been sitting out there for a number of years. So when that's the case, then you have to pay from the time they initiated the lawsuit.
That's been a problem because people who file these, the attorneys who handle them allow them to accrue for 4 or 5 years. One of the reasons is they get paid on the basis of the refunds. So we've adopted a policy now of going after these and trying to, if they can be settled, we settle them right away. Kristen wants to do that, so we try to settle them in the first year. So the exposure for
Much
refunds
better.
is considerably lessened. I still have a few old ones that I'm working on. I'm trying to, I can't guarantee you how those will turn out, but all the new ones, we've been opening negotiations right away to try to resolve these.
So we have to finish the amendment?
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
So we are amending the resolution to say which will result in a reduction of the assessment for the 2013 tax roll in the amount, or
To
to the
The
amount.
amount.
Yeah.
So now we vote on this as amended?
Right.
Right, and so,
We have to vote to amend.
okay,
Oh.
so do we have a vote?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor? Aye. Okay, so now we're voting on it as amended.
A motion and a second.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye. Perfect.
And we added Resolution 4713 of 2014, resolution accepting proposed local law 1 of 2014 for purposes of commencing the local law adoption process.
I'll explain this also. This is, if you remember, the planning board chair came before us, I think it was at the last meeting, and there was a concern that there is a requirement of open space for conservation subdivisions in the Greenbelt and waterfront districts. And in cases where there's just a lot line adjustment and they're not creating new lots, this open space conservation requirement would apply, which doesn't make a lot of sense and cast an unreasonable burden on property owners who want to just come in for a simple lot line adjustment. So following their request, we're amending the law to eliminate the requirement of open space. In a lot line adjustment, we are not creating a new lot. That's basically what this provides.
And if
Okay,
it is developed, they would have to,
If they create new lots through a traditional subdivision in those districts, then they would have to preserve that open space.
okay.
I'll
okay.
second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for putting that together so quickly, Warren. You were busy.
problem.
Okay.
I spoke with the gentleman whose property was the inspiration for looking at this issue, and he was very appreciative that we're moving quickly on it.
That's
Okay,
fantastic.
great. All right, so I'd like to invite anyone from the public up to the podium for 3 minutes to discuss any item of town business. Please state your name and address. Hello?
My name is James Walensky. I live at
You
30.
want to bring that closer so you
I don't know
can?
if you, yes, you gotta bring that podium closer.
and make me move? My name is James Walensky. I live at 32 Green Tree Drive North. Has anybody gone by the war zone? Last October 31st, I was attacked by the delinquents who ride motorcycles up and down the roads. You call the Hyde Park police, they don't want to do anything. Actually, they pal around with the parents who have these kids that do this. They all hang out at the Crum Elbow Gun Club. Someone gave away information in the police department telling these neighbors my cameras didn't work. They were struck by lightning. I get attacked by all these little juvenile delinquents. I call your Hyde Park police. And yes, I got a little upset when I'm getting hit with eggs and rocks, okay? But the police didn't want to show up. So I got a little nasty with the young lady. I said, look, I'm going to come down and grab you. Well, I get arrested 3 days later down in this town hall. I have to walk back to my car. By the way, it's a long walk uphill or down. Meanwhile, your three stooges, the ones that were on the site but didn't want to come down and see this attack, what am I supposed to do? My rights were violated. And you know what? You dial 911, the only thing that's going to do for you Democrats is show you where the bodies are. Because people can't defend themselves. I'm not going to go out there with a baseball bat against kids, but I can't get the police to do their job. I think now is what you ought to do is disincorporate them and use the Sheriff's Department state troopers. Because you know what? When they had me in my car, when they had me in that car after they arrested me, you're not calling Hyde Park Police anymore. No, I'm not. In fact, I'm going to a town hall meeting, and I'm going to explain to them what kind of circus we have. You got a great country club up there, but they don't want to do their job. You got one dispatcher that can't get a police officer to show up when eggs are coming at my house. When I raked my yard, I found at least 30 eggs on my roof and at least 35 in my backyard. Not to mention all these nice little custom rocks, you know, landscaping stones, all over my yard. Because these little delinquents want to ride up and down on the roads on quads. Hey, guess what? The warm weather's coming, thank God. Except now I can't go out of my yard and enjoy an afternoon without hearing a motorcycle 3 miles away going up and down the roads. Are we going to do something about this? We do have laws in place. We just don't have anybody want to enforce them. But I was told to call the Sheriff's Department and state troopers. Why don't we get rid of the Hyde Park PD? Then we have a little extra money to work with. If they're going to tell me I have to call someone else, I got the neighbors from hell. The mother was a bus driver at Hyde Park School. She got busted out there in the entranceway, drunk off her. Okay? She lost her license. Meanwhile, this little juvenile delinquent of hers, it's about 19 to 20 years old, who is coaching these kids how to hang me.
Walensky, thank you for your comments, but we can't use this medium to slander people, okay?
Okay,
So,
well then what do you want me to do?
I want
My
you to-
rights were violated, just like the people on the
Like-
George Washington Bridge.
I'd like you to finish up your statement, and that's,
As I talked to Mr. Levian, he told me to bring it to the town board to see what we can do.
okay.
Because my rights were violated, just like what happened on a GWB when these people are sitting in gridlock because someone wanted to tie up the traffic. Okay? There's supposed to be a public service. Now, if they're not doing their job, why do we pay for it?
Okay. I see the 3-minute thing has gone off, so
Yeah,
thank
I know.
you. Thanks
Well,
for your comments.
Hopefully we get something done. If not, I'll be back later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention that next Saturday at Hackett Hill, we have our Easter egg hunt for the children. So please come. There's going to be different times for different age groups, and the Easter Bunny will be there.
Oh,
A lot
nice.
of eggs and stuff. So it's at Hackett Hill. I believe it starts at 1 o'clock, I believe.
Okay.
But check the website.
Great. All right, well, thank you so much. Yeah, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And I just want to say one thing that I didn't say before. but-
These are on.